The heart is the most important organ or energy center in the body because it has the largest electromagnetic field. And we have teachers like Joe Dispenza who have really scientified the powers of the heart.
How does our heart relate to timeline jumping, as you know, in the wheel of time that they describe? What is the role of our heart there?
A path is a path. There's a million paths you could take in life, but a path without heart is never enjoyable or fulfilling. And so you always want to find a path that lights your heart up in some way. And imagination is the greatest key in your healing, because if you can imagine something being real, you can not only dream it into reality, but you can also, your subconscious and your body start to believe that it's real.
What's the vision of the world for you where more people learn to see the divine around them?
So that I would say grounded spirituality is earth-based spirituality. It means we incarnated here on this planet for a reason, and we have to honor the mother upon which we live and walk and breathe.
Isabella Aznar, welcome on Just Tap In. What are you most excited about right now globally and in your life?
Well, there are two things that I'm very excited about. The first is probably just ancestral healing and getting to share teachings about ancestral healing with people around the world, with my community. I am getting ready to launch a family constellations training. And so I developed the whole curriculum, and I've been really, really deep in unearthing and exploring all of the underlying energetics and dynamics in people's familial line. And for me, that's been probably the greatest source of personal liberation in my life. So it's been a long time coming to get to share it with others. And I think probably the first question I like to ask people when I meet them is like, tell me about your mom and your dad and your family and your dynamic, because the patterns that we see there tend to indicate certain things in our lives. They're very telling. And then I'm also really excited because for the first time ever, I'm sharing my creative writing with the world. I have a poetry book that's coming out in a month, and I'm very, very excited to lift up the hood on this very vulnerable and personal aspect of my creativity.
Beautiful. And I'll ask you, how's your relationship with your mom and your dad in just a little bit. But before that, you know, you were saying about ancestral healing and lineage, and we've all heard that saying probably of when you heal this aspect of your life and this, you know, when you heal yourself and you go on a healing journey, you heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. Mm-hmm. So what is a message that you would like to give to the 7 generations back and to the 7 generations that are coming forward in the future right now?
I think the message that comes through is that you don't just have ancestral you don't just have ancestral curses and burdens. You also have ancestral gifts, and those gifts are really important to look at. And it's really important to call in the resources that your ancestors did cultivate, because every single person, even the people who caused harm and abuse in a lineage, there's also always gifts that were passed down, and acknowledging them and calling them forward is a great source of strength that I don't think many people are aware of.
When we talk about those gifts, for example, you know, you talk a lot about the morphogenic field. How would you describe to someone how those gifts and also those burdens get passed down or transferred through this collective field that we're a part of as a human race?
Mm-hmm. So the morphogenic field is something that was really explored by a man named Rupert Sheldrake, and it's been studied scientifically as well. I mean, if you look at animals across the earth, they have information that is carried in same species animals. So for example, birds, without ever being told. They know where to migrate, just like their ancestors did, without anyone ever showing them. Cows across the earth tend to face the same direction, even though they have no way of being in contact with each other. And so humans, we also have this energy field of information available to us within our species. And because we tend to have a more elevated consciousness than most animals do, that information is a little bit more complex. And so that morphogenic field is also known as the knowing field in family constellations. And through the knowing field, there's this inherent knowing of information that could never have been verbally told to us, and these patterns that are imbued in us, as well as gifts. And so one of the ways in which that could show up would be like, I don't know, once upon a time, someone in your lineage was a healer, and 5, 6 generations down, a child could be born and they have the same healing gifts, right? And usually people tend to focus on the negative patterns that are passed down, but the gifts are very much present as well.
Hmm. And I think as our species evolved, we unlocked certain gifts on a collective level too. I think one of those being imagination, something that you really like to hone in on and talk about. So talk to us about how imagination can be leveraged as a gift for humanity, and where that is taking us into the near future, because right now we're creating so many new things, but it almost seems like a large part of the population has shut down their imagination. So what happens to a species or humanity when we retune back into our imagination?
Well, I think it's no coincidence that our education system kind of tries to erase imagination from us as we become older. We're born with so much vivid imagination as children, and most children have their imagination invalidated through the adults in their lives, the teachers, the parents, saying things like, you have to grow up, stop daydreaming, stop playing with your imaginary friend, you have to get a job. And there's this pipeline that conditions you out of exploring your imagination. And my perspective is that that is there because if everyone was aware of the power of their imagination, we would live in a very different reality in which people couldn't be so controlled. And at least, so in my lineage, in the Toltec lineage, there's 3 really powerful eyes. I like to call them like the trinity of the Toltec lineage: imagination, intuition, and intention. And imagination is the greatest key in your healing, because if you can imagine something being real, you can not only dream it into reality, but you can also, your subconscious and your body start to believe that it's real. And so you start to recondition yourself to this new reality. And in the trauma world, they've studied this extensively. People who have extreme PTSD, one of the best ways to help them heal is improv acting classes. So maybe you'd have a person who's never experienced love in their life, and they were like really severely abused, and they go to an improv class and they start practicing and imagining and acting out what it would be like to experience love. And maybe they're pulling from their imagination a Disney story or whatever, version of love they've seen in the media and want to aspire to feel and have. And through that practice, through that imagination and play, they can start to actually teach themselves what love feels like.
You brought up the Toltec tradition, one that you're very connected to. And I heard once that you were saying that the Toltecs, it's likely that they knew about the quantum field before now science is catching up to it. Mm-hmm. So what did they know about this quantum field and how that relates to feelings and imagination and all the things that we've kind of been stirring together for now? What did they know about that field?
So the Toltecs existed so long ago, and the transmission of information has been very much word of mouth. And in my case, in my family, we have like written books from my great grandmother that were kind of passed down. She tried to write everything down, and it's very abstract concepts. So Carlos Castaneda also writes about these concepts a little bit. They originated in ancient Mexico, this idea of turning the wheel of time. And so that's kind of how they refer to the quantum field. And it's this abstract concept of time being not linear, but actually more like a wheel. And within that wheel, there are all of these tiny little pockets of reality. There's many, many different pockets of reality, or timelines, if you prefer to call it that. And you exist in one. And so quantum leaping is really having that very quick shift from one reality to another. And they talked a lot about imagination being the key to that. And they also had a slightly different approach to teaching the quantum than is like now popularized, that included connection to spirit. So in addition to having a really clear intention and then visualizing and imagining that dream reality and feeling gratitude like it already exists, which is the more popularized version of working with the quantum. They also believed that you have to be really mindful that your intention is for the highest good, because if it's not for the highest good, the universe won't always help you with it. So then we have these people out there who are like, I want to manifest a Lamborghini, or, I want to be very famous, and it doesn't happen when they try these manifestation techniques. And from my perspective, that's because the intention hasn't been clarified, and it's not necessarily going to help them or humanity evolve in some way. And then there's also this aspect of giving before you take. So when in my lineage, when you tap into these attempts to manifest, you're also very much offering yourself to spirit and saying like there's some level of service in this, and I'm offering to do this not just for myself, but yeah, for the greater good in some way.
You've also said that your favorite aspect of this teaching body of teachings of the Toltecs is the aspect that has to do with the heart and leading from the heart and the heart coherence. So how does our heart relate to timeline jumping, as in the wheel of time that they describe? What is the role of our heart there?
Yeah, so the heart is the most important organ or energy center in the body because it has the largest electromagnetic field. And we have teachers like Joe Dispenza who have really sciencified the powers of the heart and made them really accessible to people who maybe are a little more skeptical. But in the Toltec lineage, they believe that the heart is the compass and the heart never leads you astray. So, they say that any path is the same, like a path is a path. There's a million paths you can take in life, but a path without heart is never enjoyable or fulfilling. And so you always want to find a path that lights your heart up in some way. And to me, there are two things that light your heart up. There's the things that bring you joy in life, and the things that fill you up on a personal, creative level. And then there's things that help you evolve. And so tapping into the power of the heart, really feeling from the heart and letting it be this guide of leadership, really is supportive in knowing what you want to manifest and calling it in. So your heart, again, coming back to the science part of it, has the largest electromagnetic field in the body, and gratitude is one of the highest vibrational emotions we can feel. So when we're feeling gratitude in the heart, our heart is sending out pulses of energy waves into the field, and that pulse of energy is like a magnet that then brings what is a match to that vibration into our lives. So from the Toltec perspective, it was a lot less sciencified. Like they didn't know that your heart had the largest electromagnetic field in the body, but they did know that there was this wisdom in feeling. And I think that's at large been pretty neglected in society.
I would love to go back to that moment where you found or discovered your grandmother's notebook full of all of these, passed down word of mouth teachings. Can you remember in that moment what really spoke to you, that you were flipping through the pages and you said, this feels like truth to me, that still in many ways might lead your life today and how you see the world?
Yeah, I mean, I was first introduced to these teachings and to that book when I was very young. And my grandmother would mostly try to tell me things in simpler terms so that I could understand them as a child. And then later on in life, she developed dementia. And I asked my mom, I was like, can you get that book for me? I really want to read it. I really want to integrate these teachings into my life and into my work again. And yeah, so she went to Mexico. She got the books for me. She brought them home, and I sat and tried to kind of decipher what the teachings were, because they're almost like riddles. They're complex. And I think the biggest takeaway and the biggest thing that was very, very clear to me is this idea that when you are working with spirit and when you are working to co-create your life, which the Toltec see as art, right? You're the artist of your life, you're creating your reality on purpose, is that in order to create that reality, you have to call in the support of your ancestors, of your guides, of spirit, of Mother Earth. And so it's really about being in relationship with everything. I think a lot of what doesn't resonate with me about Western spirituality is that it's very much take and take and take. Like, I want to manifest, I want this thing, I want to keep ascending and evolving. And in the Toltec lineage, it's very much like, I'm going to give to spirit, I'm going to artfully, yeah, give myself, and then I will also take and receive in return. And so there's a lot of ritualistic elements to my culture, as there is with many indigenous cultures. And in all rituals, you start by giving an offering, right? And so whether it's an energetic offering or a promise to grow or to be better for the world around you or to give back in some way, that always jumpstarts the process of co-creating your reality, right? So I think sometimes in manifestation, that part about co-creation is lost. And it's like, oh, I'm creating my reality. But people forget that, you know, we're ultimately so very connected to the greater forces at play, and they need to be honored.
Hmm. Yeah, because I've heard you describe before that your vision of spirituality is very much grounded.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like in terms of a grounded vision of spirituality, rather than some other, perspectives or visions that we've seen from other teachers or other people that claim that spiritual path?
Great question. And to that, I would say grounded spirituality is earth-based spirituality. It means we incarnated here on this planet for a reason, and we have to honor the mother upon which we live and walk and breathe. And so many people think that spirituality is about waking up out of life, when really it's about being very present with life, from my perspective, and learning to become self-actualized through interacting with life. I believe that that's why we were given the ability to sense and feel things, taste, touch, sound, so that we could really fully experience and live it. And so earth-based spirituality to me means working with the elements, honoring the earth, like listening to and learning from nature. I think there's this tendency to see animals and other aspects of nature as lesser than, but there's so much deep wisdom there. And actually, in my lineage, it's very interesting because the Toltecs did not work a lot with plant medicine. So people are always surprised that I have not worked with much plant medicine. I've worked with Los Niños mushrooms, and I think this year will be the year that I sit with Aya, but I haven't. I've been really waiting until I felt the call, because those experiences in my lineage are thought to be like deep initiations. And so I think oftentimes in the West, coming back to that idea of trying to ascend out of life, and like that being the idea of spirituality, people go to these plants thinking that, it's going to kind of solve things for them or give them whatever it is that they're lacking, and they get to this place and they visit these plant teachers, and they have so much wisdom come through and they're open channels, and then they come back, and at some point that fades, and oftentimes they do not integrate. And then those same people are like, oh, I need to go back to the plant, right? And then there's like this reliance. And so to me, I believe that a lot of the spirits of these great master teacher plants are hurting because of how they're being misused. And so I've just wanted to be very intentional with it. And so to me, you can have these supernatural experiences where you channel and where you connect to the divine, and you can do it all without altering your state, or doing it at least sober, and through connection to nature and the earth. And I've been really lucky to experience some like incredible natural, acts of divinity just by by honoring the earth in my work.
Because you grew up living with your grandmother, and a lot of these, what we were talking about earlier, the spiritual gifts, they started coming online for you from a very early age. You were seeing angels, you realized you could channel, and she validated a lot of that, which most of the times we don't get that. So when we talk about having these experiences that are maybe more otherworldly, other dimensional, ascended experiences, how did you find yourself coming back to the earth? From seeing angels to then, offering sacred things to the earth. What was that journey and transition? Or do you play in both worlds as well? And how do you integrate that?
So there are certain practices that I think are very important when you channel, when you open up your channel. And I think everybody has the capacity to channel. I just think those gifts show up in different ways. For example, if I ever channel, I do closing rituals after where I always wash my hands in cold water, or I will just try to do something that in the trauma world I would call like using state breakers. So something sensory to bring me back into my body, whether it's sucking on a sour candy or essential oils, or just, yeah, using smells or temperature changes like a hot or a cold shower. Those things kind of will ground you back into reality. Putting your feet on the earth, it's very important to come back to earth. It can also look like eating a very grounding meal like potatoes, or if you eat meat, things of that nature kind of reground you. And it's just very, very important to do that. And I always like to keep this concept or this idea in mind of like letting God or letting the sky come to you. So instead of like always focusing on ascending, it's like, can you allow that to come to you while you remain grounded?
Your Instagram name being Bela Divine, I wanted to ask you that, along those lines, what does divinity really mean, and what has it meant to you over the years, and how you've cultivated that relationship to the divine within you or the divinity around us?
Yeah, I chose that Instagram name because I started to realize that everyone and everything is divine in nature. And I think we don't act like it sometimes. We tend to hide certain parts of ourselves and disregard our gifts or hide them because it's the most vulnerable thread of who you are. And it's not widely accepted in society. So I wanted to kind of claim that word and say, no, I recognize that I'm divine. And I also recognize that everyone else is. And to me, the word divinity really speaks to this idea that we are connected to the cosmos in some way, shape, or form, and connected to something greater than us. And there's this magic that we all have access to if we're willing to try to connect to it. And it's cosmic in nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the vision of the world for you where more people learn to see the divine around them and also in themselves?
I think claiming their gifts in front of others and finding communities where people will accept and claim your gifts feels like a really important part of my vision at this point in time, whether that's creativity, right? Because I think creativity and art to me is the expression of your soul. So that is inherently divine to me. So whether it's through art and through this expression of your soul, or whether it's through a gift that's of service to the world, I just want people to feel more confident claiming that. And to me, I think an important message for a lot of people who are in that journey and maybe trying to even monetize that journey is like, when you choose that path of whether it's creativity or spiritual service, allow yourself to go into it with this mindset of like, if I never got paid to do this, would I be happy when I was like 70 years old getting to do this for free? And if you move with that energy, of course, people deserve to be paid for their work. But if you move with that energy as you go into your work, there will be this purity that's inherent in what you create. And I think that will help move through a lot of the roadblocks that tend to come up.
You emphasize claiming your gifts in front of others. Why do you feel that's so important?
Because all of the work that you do alone, it doesn't really fully count all the way. It's not fully integrated until you can put yourself in the situations where you're going to feel awkward, embarrassed, nervous, anxious, whatever your tendency is to feel, until you play with the power of it. And to me, power play is going out into the world and letting yourself be seen. And so claiming it in front of others makes it real, and it allows you to move past fear of judgment and doing things for the sake of approval, and to really step into your leadership, I think.
Yeah. And Bella, this is a pretty weird podcast. We say some pretty weird shit on here. And you said that you're a big believer in front loading the weirdest parts of yourself.
Yeah.
You know, maybe when it comes to meeting others, maybe even trying to find a romantic partner as well. Why is it so important to start and front load with saying like, yes, this is the part of me that is the weirdest. I'm going to show it to you first. What is the magic on the other side of doing that? Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode.
Well, it saves you a lot of time when it comes to the wrong connections. And I think that time is the most valuable resource that we have here. It's also a really great anti-people pleaser practice. So, I think we all have a little bit of that people pleaser in us at some point in our lives. And it really allows you to practice loving yourself authentically, even if you don't receive approval. So if you meet someone and one of my weird traits, or maybe just like not as lovable traits, some people don't like this trait, is that I am a terrible texter. And so I always tell people when I meet them, I love you and I want to develop this friendship, but I'm an in real life, or like call me 5 times and maybe I'll answer kind of person. And if you're okay with that, this friendship's going to work. And if you're not, that's okay too. But you can't, I let people know what they can and can't expect from me. And that allows me the freedom to be myself, and without feeling that pressure to contort into something that I'm not.
Going back to trauma and what we were talking about earlier is, you said that the highest expression of ourselves is our creativity, and it's almost like that soul essence.
Mm-hmm.
But you've described how we have our soul essence, but on top of it, we have this learned identity.
Mm-hmm.
What creates that learned identity that we can start shedding those layers off to get deeper into our soul essence and be able to express in the way that we've been talking about?
Well, conditioning and ego. I mean, the ego's sole purpose is to keep us safe. And so our ego learns young to observe the conditioning around us and to implement it so that we are accepted and that we are safe. And so to me, the most important thing that you could do to be just someone who loves yourself and really accepts who you are is to give yourself a period of time in life to explore your ego, a period of time in life where you don't have to consider others, even if it's just a couple of months. Like maybe you have to take care of your sick parent, or you've been in a relationship for a long time and you want to maintain those things. But if you can create even a pocket of a couple of months to not have to consider anyone, to put yourself at the center of your universe and to explore and play with your ego. What are your ego's discomforts? How does your ego express itself in the world? Um, what triggers and shadows rise? And I think that we can see that a little bit more easily when we don't feel the need to have to cater to others. So my suggestion would be put yourself at the center of your universe for a bit, and know that sometimes in order to truly be selfless, you do have to have a period of being selfish first.
Mm. And I know you had a period of traveling, before doing all the work that you're doing now. And what was revealed to you about your ego when you started going on that journey and really discovering yourself?
That's such a great question. I went on a trip around the world when I was 21 and started in Sri Lanka. I ended in Fiji. I circumnavigated the globe with my best friend. And I really, really wanted to go to India. I don't know why. I just was feeling very called to India. And my intention for the trip was to learn the truth of the world. I wanted to see it all. And I noticed that when I was in these other countries, these opportunities and adventures would arise, and I would feel a lot of resistance and fear to the moment. And I think that resistance and fear really hold us back from experiencing all that the moment has to offer. And naturally, some of that resistance and fear came from this idea that I was 21 in foreign country, a young cute girl with another young cute girl. Like, you don't want to get kidnapped or anything like that. But when I really surrendered to that discomfort, I had some of the most beautiful experiences of my life. Like, I remember meeting these two guys on motorcycles, and they seemed really great. They seemed pure and sweet, and they invited us to basically take a tuk-tuk like 2 hours away to a secret spot that they wanted to show us. And, I think any parent would be like, oh my God, what are you getting yourself into? But something in my heart was telling me that I was safe. But I remember being in the back of this tuk-tuk and being really like anxious and afraid. And, I was like, where are we going? What's going to happen? What if I get kidnapped? What's my backup plan? But the guy driving the tuk-tuk, one thing that really spoke to me was that as he was driving it, there would be frogs jumping in the road, and he would swerve to like avoid hitting the frogs. And so he was really driving this tuk-tuk so carefully to like protect these animals. And then, so I chose to trust and surrender, and to trust my intuition, and to trust the little positive qualities that I was seeing. And in that, I opened myself up to connection and to learning, and from people who maybe I wouldn't have even considered were teachers. And when we finally got to this beautiful beach, we like had dinner with this Indian family in the middle of nowhere, this gorgeous ocean. It was such a beautiful memory. And it really taught me to feel into just what my intuition is telling me, I think, and to be open to adventure.
Mm. I love that story because you said that as soon as your heart felt safe, you knew that it was, the moment to go and ride that tuk-tuk. So can we train ourselves to feel more safe in our heart, even when the world is giving us signs not to do it and not to feel safe?
Yes, absolutely. So intuition is something that you can cultivate. And most people don't know this, but your intuition is directly inherited through your mother line. So if you struggle to trust your intuition, something that can be helpful is to look at your mother line and see if your mother or your grandmother were people who doubted themselves a lot, or who, didn't really trust their intuition. And sometimes doing some ancestral work there can be supportive, but also learning to understand your intuition is very supportive. So our intuition actually speaks to us through our senses and through the heart a lot as well. And you don't hear your intuition in a moment of panic. Like, once your mind already has a narrative of like, oh my God, I'm scared, blah, 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 it's not intuition. Intuition only arrives through a state of neutrality. So what that means is you're not already thinking or feeling anything, in one particular way, and a piece of information will come through. Like, there's a sudden shift in your body or a sudden thought that comes in. That would be intuition. So my suggestion, if you want to learn to hear your intuition better, is to learn how to create neutrality within your body and mind. For me, that tends to look like moving my body until my mind gets quiet. And once my mind is quiet, then I ask, and I put my hand on my heart and I ask myself, what's going to energize me or drain me long term? Or I'll just try to feel into the energy levels in my heart around a decision, or usually it's around decisions that I'm trying to hear my intuition. I think that's usually the case. So just asking like what's going to be more energizing long term versus draining long term. And for those of you who are really indecisive, it's really supportive as well to practice feeling what your energy is telling you through neutrality first.
Mm. And for the people that have followed your journey, Bella, they may know that your house burned down during the LA fires.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also following along that journey, and I saw that you found that there was a connection there to your family lineage. What did you discover about yourself and your ancestors in that situation that's very, very tough on many aspects, emotionally, physically? What did you discover there?
Oh my gosh, that's such an interesting thing that I found out. I found out that my lineage, every single person in my lineage for about 5 generations back had lost their home to a natural disaster. And I had no idea until my mom and I were reflecting on it. So it was a very interesting thing to become aware of. And it made me kind of remember the importance of continually trying to explore the ancestral work, because it was it was something that I never realized would be a part of my story. And now that it's happened to me, I think it's something important to work on. And I think there's no coincidence that it happened to me.
Hmm. Is it possible to say that if this event happened 7 generations back, or however many the pattern has repeated, then that is inevitably going to be happening to me? Or is there a way to shift the timeline through this work with ancestral lineages to maybe learn the pattern before it actually happens to us?
So interestingly enough, my family's very spiritual. So I was talking about this with my uncle, and he believes, and again, this is lineage teaching, so sometimes they're interpreted in different ways, but he believes that natural disasters are one of the only things that happen that are not necessarily a part of our karma. So it's not something that I think ancestral work could necessarily do too much around. And the exception would be if there was some kind of emotional or karmic pattern underneath the natural disaster. So I would have to, and this is something that I plan on doing, but I have to look at what was happening in those people's lives at the point that the natural disaster happened. Does that make sense? So there might be a connection between, some kind of big, big, massive change happening in their lives, or abuse or betrayal, or one of the major karmic shadows that then led that to be activated. But it's interesting because there's not much that you can do on a karmic level to prevent a natural disaster from happening generation to generation, unless there is some underlying emotional karmic wound. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And we both come from South Central American lineages, and a lot of what we are taught is about that there it exists like curses and things like that, and things that are put on families like black magic, dark magic, things like that. How have you explored that realm of this side of the world that is very common, unfortunately, or depending on how you see it? But how have you come to terms and understood that aspect of it?
So I want to speak to that. And I have one other thing that I would like to say as well. Firstly, I will say that I believe that curses can be broken, but that's where you have to get into a little bit of the witchier stuff. So I believe that we should all be clearing our energy regularly. I believe that calling in spirit and asking for guidance is very, very important. A lot of times people, again, they just want to wait for a sign or a synchronicity, but you have to call it in. You have to request it for the universe to give it. That's a fundamental belief of mine. In Mexico, there's limpias, like where you go do a limpia with a huevo. They'll use an egg to like clean your energy, and then they'll assign you certain specific ritual practices depending on what the curse is to clear it, whether it's having someone come and clean your whole house, smudge your whole house, or oftentimes it'll be some kind of a dieta with plants. And again, the earth plant allies play a big role in helping to detox our energy fields. And so it's all energetic, and we have to implement beyond anything else energetic protection to prevent curses from occurring. I also study with a lineage in Peru called Los Turpos, and I have a Misha, like a medicine bag with them that I like to regularly use to clean my energy field. But the other thing that I wanted to speak to is that I don't see this fire that I lived, my home burning down, as a curse so much. I actually see it kind of as a gift because I feel lucky to have had this initiation. And I feel that there are going to be many more natural disasters on this earth. I think that we're probably going to reach very high tension points and lots of changes that will seem pretty tragic in the moment, but that will also allow for healing and a new earth to take place. And so, as someone who teaches a lot, I see a lot of the painful experiences that I've had in my life as the ability to empathize with that experience for others. I mean, that experience permanently changed me, and what I've been able to learn through it has affirmed my leadership, my self-trust, my compassion for other people who've been through similar things. And I don't know. I mean, I have less attachments now than I ever have in my life. I feel very aware of what's actually important, and I think I'm a better person for it. So I see it as such a gift because it's like the rest of my life didn't fall apart, and the rest of my life is really beautiful. I feel very blessed, but it was just one of those initiations I had to live. And I believe that there's two kinds of futures. There's the future that we plan, the steps that we take towards our visions, and then there's the intelligent future. And the intelligent future doesn't say, "Are you ready?" It says, "What are you going to do with this?" And it's not good or bad, right? People tend to think it's bad because it'll show up as like your house burning down. It's very intense, but it has to do with evolution. And so I'm grateful to have the tools and the support to have been able to look at that experience and let it grow me instead of let it make me bitter.
I love that perspective. And it's like the earth is speaking to us right now. Gaia is speaking to us. And as the bearers of this land for the future generations, we have to start coming into that relationship with the earth more and more. And she's calling our attention. That's the way I'm seeing it. I also don't see any of these things as curses or, any negative connotation to it, but as moments and potentials for transformation and transmutation, which is the way that you decided to take this. But there may be instances where people fall into that victimhood of why me, why my house, the house next to me wasn't burned down. So really speaking into that teaching of we are the creators of our reality. For someone or for people that might even experience that earth change very viscerally and raw, how would you remind them that we are creating this reality and the earth is co-creating it with us right now? She's letting us know certain things to be aware of.
I think I would probably say to let initiations like that bring you closer to the life that you really want to live. Because for me, at least, losing my home, this kind of natural disaster where all of the material attachments are gone, made me aware of the other attachments that I had. And letting go of the material things was actually not so hard for me, but letting go of how I ran my business, my visions for the future and the plan that I had for it, there was so much that was very, very hard for me to let go of. And it wasn't the things, it was more so the way that I had built my life. And so I decided to no longer focus on what I wanted from the future and to let life show me what life wanted for me. And in that was this gift, because I think that for most of my life, I've ran this really beautiful service-led business, and I love what I do. I feel like life called me into this, it happened very effortlessly and easily for me. But at heart, I'm a writer, and I'm writing a fantasy book, and I just, I'm working on this poetry book that's coming out in a month. And I also wanted to lean more into teaching the esoteric and the mystical. And so I allowed myself in the aftermath of this fire to say, okay, like, what if I just burned everything down? Burned down my business, my relationship, my future, like visions, anything that I had planned. And just like from the ashes, what would I want to build anew? And what came through for me is like, I want to teach or oracular shamanic work and constellations. And I want to have more time to write. And so I consciously chose to take half the amount of clients that I normally do and to start restructuring my life a little bit different. And I feel lighter than ever now, right? Because when it burned down, I was like, burn it all to the ground. And from that, I was able to really see like, what do I want when I take off the pressure of, continuing to build more or to follow whatever trajectory I thought was made the most sense.
Hmm. That's so interesting when you said that you let everything burn down. The image I saw was, lighting everything on fire, and there are going to be things and objects that do not burn in that fire.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things that can stay. Those are the things that are true for us. And the rest, it was maybe not an illusion, but something that was no longer maybe serving us for our next evolution. Because an initiation will take you into the deepest cores of yourself. And you've really claimed this word of being a mystic.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been also other initiations that I would love to touch on in order to claim this title of a mystic, or someone that can go into the esoteric and the metaphysical and all these different aspects of life. What were some of those other initiations that led you there?
So I have a really great story for you about the first retreat that I led a couple of years ago. I first went to Mexico to meet my teachers and to have, this shamanic initiation. And in the shamanic initiation, they called it our rebirth, and they gave us our spiritual names. So my spiritual name, I'll just share the translation because you're only supposed to share it in ceremony. The translation is mountain that rains fire. So I was given this name, and I remember thinking, kind of being skeptical of my teachers and thinking, I don't resonate with this at all because I don't resonate with fire. I'm a Pisces, I'm a water sign. I don't resonate with fire. Never have. And then I went to go host my first retreat for 25 women in Tepoztlan. And we went for a day trip, and we came back to the retreat center, and the mountain in front of the retreat center was on fire. And they called the National Guard. And I'm trying to, keep the peace amidst all of my clients. So after everyone goes back to their rooms, they're excused after dinner. We're seeing this mountain burn down in front of us, pretty close to the retreat center. It's a little scary. Smoke is very present in the air. My mother, my uncle, and two of my best friends and I started praying for rain. So we're sitting by this pool praying for rain, and I head back to my room, and I can hear like the shaman drumming and like, playing the conch in the town that we're in. And there's all these crazy winds, and there's ash blowing in the wind, and it starts raining. And I'm in my room just looking at this mountain burning down, seeing this ash in the air, watching this rain. And I remembered, oh my God, they told me that my initiatory name was Mountain That Rains Fire. And there was the mountain raining fire. We prayed for the rain. And there was all this foreshadowing leading up to this moment. I remember asking the taxi driver on my way to the retreat center, oh, it's so dry here. How often does it rain? And he said, oh, like 4 or 5 times a year. So the coincidence of this fire, this mountain burning down, and then the rain coming, it wasn't a coincidence at all. It felt like such a massive initiation. I was so grateful for it. And also that name feels present with the fires I lived in California. I lived on a mountain by the ocean, and, a week or 2 later it rained, but it was raining fire. I mean, if you look at the videos of what was happening in the Palisades, the winds were blowing the fire around. So it was, that definitely feels like probably one of the most powerful initiations that I've gotten to live.
Wow. I love that. And going off of that, what is your relationship to fire now at this point in your life?
I have so much reverence for fire. Now I have a deep love for
Now you
fire.
gotta love it.
I love it. Now I resonate with it because it's the ultimate purifier, you know? So every time that there's a fire, it seems like destruction initially, but after the fire, it's like there's this fertile ground for something new to be born. And there's a magic in that. And I also think that at a certain point in your journey, when you have the tools and you know how to take care of yourself, it's not that you look forward to those moments of suffering, but it feels so good to hold yourself through them and to know that you trust yourself and to know that you have yourself through whatever happens in life. Like there is this just leadership that comes through those moments that you can't learn, you have to experience.
Hmm. And I bet it also taught you a lot about love. And, you've spoken about that wound that you healed of a love will never last for me. On the other side of that, what energy do you feel is most needed in order for love to last in our life going forward?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's been my core, one of my two core wounds in my life is love not lasting. And while I think that I could have many different relationships in my life, it's not necessarily about just finding one person and like clinging to them and making it last. It's more so about attracting the kind of partner that makes you feel really safe and really, really loved. And for me, there's like a loyalty aspect that's important and just trust. And the biggest thing that I think shifted me to that belief was family constellations beyond anything else, and also clarifying my values, and again, kind of front loading that weirdness that we were talking about. The more unapologetically yourself you are, and the less that you have, these projected fantasies, the more purity can come through in love. And to me, truth, authenticity, integrity are at the core of deep, lasting love.
You brought up family constellations. What does true reconciliation with our family lineage and our family patterns really look like or feel like for people that do this work and then go on the other side of that and reconcile everything that has come before them?
So I think one thing that's really important that I love to share that triggers people is that forgiveness is not necessary to heal your family wounds. What it is possible, but it depends on the severity of the wound. Like if there was someone in your family that murdered someone else, that's very severe. You do not have to forgive that transgression. It might be impossible to forgive, but you do have to hold them accountable with love. And so what that means is, coming to this place of you did this and this was very harmful, and I'm holding you accountable with love so that this isn't accepted and perpetuated and passed down in the lineage. So that's definitely a very important thing that I love to teach, because so many people go through traumatic things and they're like, I just can't forgive this. And there's a freedom in knowing that you don't have to, but that doesn't mean that you cut that person out. It doesn't mean that you don't heal the family structure. It means that you come to the accountability and you request accountability with love. But beyond that, what I love so much about family constellations and the morphogenic field, which you can work with the morphogenic field in other ways, the energy field. Any kind of reenactment work tends to work with that energy field, where maybe you have an object representing your family, your father, we can say, and you say things to him that you've never been able to say in your life to him in person. That experience that you have, if you lean into it, it can change the energy dynamics of your family. And so there's this rearranging of the energy field that happens when you do that work on yourself for you to get closure. So sometimes that looks like being able to tell your parents all of the ways in which they traumatized you, even if they didn't mean to, right? Like I love my parents, and I've had so many experiences with constellations where I've had to say, you are the reason I have this pattern. I learned this from you. All trauma, all behavior is learned. And so it's kind of like requesting accountability on an energetic level. And so while you may never be able to do that with the human version of them, on a soul level, it's felt and it creates this recalibration of the energy field. So, for example, my mom and I had a very codependent relationship growing up. She relied on me so much and she called me all the time. And emotionally, I was really her support system because she was an immigrant in the United States and, she didn't quite fit in. And when I had my first family constellation, I remember looking at, in this case, it was a figurine representing her and saying, I can't save you or carry your pain anymore. And oh, it hurt to acknowledge that, like I can't, even though little me wanted to. And it was, it wasn't long, like maybe a month after that I noticed my mom really respecting my freedom, my independence, not overloading me with her emotional stuff. And it set her free in a big way too. And she didn't really know that this happened. Like she's open to and very into the spiritual work. But I think if I had just tried to heal that attachment with her and addressed it verbally, she probably would have gotten offended. And the fact that I worked with it on an energetic level really did a lot for our dynamic. So I think
Mm.
that when you address all of those wounds through reenactment or through family constellations, it deeply, deeply can change how you relate to your family, and how you relate to your family can then have this ripple effect on how they relate to you and each other as well.
Mm. When is forgiveness necessary?
So there are 3 levels of severity when it comes to inherited trauma, and I cannot remember the names of each one off the top of my head, so I won't pretend to remember them all. They have, I don't know, very technical names, but the third level is considered to be unforgivable, and some of the things that are under that third level of transgression include murder or sexual assault. More extreme forms of abuse do not require forgiveness. So, I mean, people can change, right? So someone might have done something like that and then do the work to change, and at that point forgiveness may feel viable. But if there is something in you that feels like something that was done to you or someone in your family is unforgivable, and that process of trying to forgive actually makes you just feel more rageful, more angry, more obsessive about what happened, it can be more helpful to then have a ritual of holding them accountable, which in constellations they call atonement. It's holding them accountable with love. So it can look like, again, sitting at your altar and writing a letter or speaking to that person who did something, and saying, hey, this is all the pain that what you did caused, and I'm giving it back now. And I'm holding you accountable for it with love. Doesn't mean I
Mm.
hate you. It just means like we're not going to brush this under the rug, right?
Yeah. I'm really curious on the way that you see karma, because you brought it up now a few times, and um, obviously different traditions have their own interpretation of it. But what have you understood about karma, and the way that you see it play out in dynamics and in people?
So I don't think I'm an expert on all karma, but I do think that one of the deepest veins of our karma is the ancestral. And we have teachers like Gabor Mate who says that inner child wounds are at the root of all trauma. And I disagree. I think that inner child wounds are a symptom of ancestral trauma. And so ancestral trauma to me is the deepest vein of our trauma and one of the clearest maps of the karmas that we're here to break. And I think that we choose our family in the soul realm because there is this resonance and this thread of karma that binds us all together. And so to me, that's why gathering information about your lineage and really trying to understand what patterns and karmas have been passed down is really, really important. And then also honoring your role in that family so that you don't acquire more karma.
Hmm. Do we always come in with the same family?
I don't believe I don't believe that we always do.
Hmm.
No, I don't believe that we always do. Do you?
Yeah. I think there may be some groupings, like a grouping of souls that travel to the 3D together, but not necessarily always at the same time. When we were talking about the family constellations, you talk about orders of love, where depending on where you're born, in the lineage, you play different roles, and sometimes the older siblings have more karma to take on. My mother had a miscarriage before I was born, but I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister, so I always thought like I am the oldest, and I know something similar happened to you with your mom. Knowing that, and I've had a few conversations with certain psychic mediums about that soul that decided not to come in. What I've been told is that soul is very much part of my soul makeup, and maybe the oversoul of what encompasses my essence, but that soul's on the other side, and it's still assisting me and supporting me, maybe not from a physical perspective, and that also applies to maybe people that have passed on, maybe people that we haven't even met. I never met my grandfather, but he passed on, and I trust to believe that now he's assisting me in some way. I don't know how that looks like, but it does resonate with me that we travel together with certain other souls, and we find certain patterns to work through together. It's like a team. Let's do this together, and then maybe we need to sub someone out or have someone new come in for this dynamic to play out. But yeah, I feel it feels resonant, that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, where I think there are these groups of souls that experience lifetimes together, but you might come into this life and someone who was your mother in your last life is someone that you meet and interact with for like a month, and you're playing out some kind of karmic healing there. So I do agree that, maybe we don't all manifest at the same time, but there is this connection. I just don't think it's always in the same way.
Yeah.
And what you were just speaking to, the miscarriage aspect that your mom went through, I'm curious, have you felt this like immense pressure at some point in your life because you are the oldest?
That's a good question. I would say at moments, pressure to be an example for my younger sister, and maybe live up to certain expectations of what the oldest son would do. And obviously I've taken on a different path for myself, and also come to peace with that with my parents, and they really support me in what I'm doing now. But there is this pressure, I feel, that the oldest sibling usually takes on. And yeah, I think I can speak for a lot of people in that aspect of, you're the oldest, your parents is the first time doing it, so they'll make more mistakes with you. I think the younger siblings sometimes have a little bit more of a roadmap, because the parents are more trained in that way,
Yeah, there are different qualities that tend to play out, depending on what order you were born in. But when there's a miscarriage before you come into this world, it is so important to acknowledge I am the second on some level. And so sometimes when we're the oldest and we weren't meant to be necessarily, or that miscarried baby isn't acknowledged, it can feel like there's a lot of doubt in our leadership. And I don't know if that's something that you ever experienced, but when I, being the oldest, tried to lead, I felt like there was a lot of hesitation and doubt in me. And it was not just the heaviness, but yeah, there was this immense pressure that didn't all belong to me. And when I started saying after that constellation for like a month, I had this phrase that I had to repeat, which is, I am the second, I am the second. It felt like a big permission slip. And to kind of acknowledge that you can be the oldest, but there's also an element of you that was meant to be the middle child.
Mm. What shifted for you when you realized you were the second?
Well, it wasn't until I had that constellation that I stopped trying to be an example of what my parents wanted. That was the big theme for me. So they didn't want me to study creative writing or psychology in college. They wanted me to get a good job and to do the traditional path. And I started making these little steps away from what they wanted. I remember transferring to a school where I had full scholarship because I did not want to go into debt for college, and choosing to change my majors. And they were very disappointed. And I had to kind of live with these different phases of life where they were kind of, scared about what I was doing. When I went and traveled the world at 21, they were so scared, right? And just yeah, I just kind of released that pressure of feeling so much responsibility to be what they wanted me to be. And
Mm.
when I succeeded, they were very happy. And, now they trust my decision making and leadership.
When they see the results,
Yeah, they're
it
like, okay, she knew what
changes
she
the
was doing,
conversation.
which is a great testament to the fact that if you want to go after something in your life, you know, you've got to be okay with the rejection and the disapproval. And I think my favorite advice for someone in that phase of life where they're really going all in on themselves is to tell the people around you who have judgment, give me X amount of time, like set a parameter around it. I remember telling my parents, give me a year. If in 1 year I'm not able to support myself doing what I love, I'll consider grad school, because they kept bugging me. And so for a year, I had the peace of them leaving me alone. And in that year, I built, my life, and it happened. It was beautiful.
Mm. And you had to show up for a year, which is the other, aspect that doesn't come as easy. But when you're being fueled by a passion and something that you love connected to the heart, the showing up factor just feels like the easiest thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Mm.
true. It's true. And I think what fueled me to be able to show up was, again, not doing it for financial gain. Like, I think healers and teachers and people who are doing tremendous amounts of work for the collective deserve to be very well paid. But I just don't think that should be the thing that's pushing them forward. I had this thought at that time, which was, what am I willing to suffer for? Because we're going to suffer no matter what in life. So you might as well choose the things that really feel worth suffering for. And so my perspective was, I want to suffer to be able to, I would be willing to suffer to be able to write and to be able to support others in their healing, because I just couldn't, yeah, I don't know. The idea of being able to help people who had been where I had been felt so powerful to me at that time. And it still does.
Mm. Yeah. What would little Bella be saying to you right now? Or what would you say to her if you could have that conversation?
I think I would say that it gets so much better than even your biggest dreams. I think that whatever my biggest dreams for my life were, like, they were so blown out of the water. And then, yeah, I think I would also say just like go after what you want as soon as you can. Like, go all in young. Go all in when you're 18, go all in from the get-go. Like, just go for it. Not, because I think for a long time I was dipping my toes in the water and just kind of waiting and seeing if things were working. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I would change a thing.
Yeah. And it pays off because once you get to a certain threshold of age, if you've been doing it for such a long time since you're young, you've already acquired a lot of experience and wisdom that the world may not acknowledge because you look young in a young vessel, but you've been doing this work, you've been putting in the work. So acknowledging you for that, for starting so young as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the last things I wanted to touch on is your legacy. And I spend some of the year in the Sierra Nevada in Santa Marta in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of indigenous tribes there, the Kogis, Arhuacos. They are like the protectors of the mountain, of the Sierra. They call us their little brothers, los hermanitos menores.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen in the past few years, because I spend New Year's over there in that land, and I've seen how the younger generations of these indigenous tribes are now starting to grasp more of things like technology. So you'll see a lot of these, indigenous people, younger people with their phones or getting drunk on New Year's or whatever it is. And I know part of your legacy is protecting the indigenous people. It's a very touchy subject of like, when technology gets integrated in these cultures, what can happen? Are we going to lose that wisdom? Are we going to lose that tradition? How do you see it?
So I've sat with this before because I think a lot of people feel that AI is coming for their, their work. And
For
I
our
think
soul.
for our soul. But I think that's the one thing that AI can't replicate is your soul, is your heart. And so to me, technology is very young and we have to learn how to relate to it as a tool. Our ancestors have had tools throughout history, whether it was like a walking stick or a compass or, now our phones. And so you learn to to train technology in and to treat it like a sacred tool. And I treat my Instagram that way, for example. I really try to be in right relation with it because I think otherwise it can suck so much of your soul. But if you remain in contact with your soul and your heart, I think that all of the teachings can be preserved. And I think more so for those people, what I would say is like hold on to anything that is from the soul and from the heart, because in a world where there's going to be so much manufactured expression, I think people are going to be starved for connection and for that kind of magic and soul expression that cannot be recreated by robots. And I think that that will always be what makes us human. And I trust that in this work that we're in, it's going to be even more important to push for that, to stay alive.
Mm. And carrying out that legacy, what do you feel is one truth from these indigenous people that you've connected with that you pray that we never forget as a species?
I think for me and my work, just honoring the feminine feels so at the core of what I believe. And I'm really lucky that a lot of my native teachers, their lineages are very feminine. They honor their great mother. They see so many of the qualities of the feminine and softness and love and the path of the heart and these rituals and beauty. They see it as so important. And one of my teachers, Rufino Turpo, who's amazing, he's the one who predicted my initiatory name, and he's been struck by lightning 3 times. Like he is the real deal. This man
Wow.
has predicted things in my life that I can't even believe. And I was skeptical of him at first, but
Has he ever made a prediction about where we're headed as a humanity?
yes. So the prediction that he believes is that for the last 500 years, the masculine ruled, or maybe it was 5,000 years. But that colonization and the masculine taking over was going to be very prevalent, but that in these times we're shifting back to the balance. So originally the feminine ruled for a long time, indigenous cultures ruled. There was a time when the Great Mother was very much a part of the story of this earth, and then that was kind of erased and colonization happened, and it was this very masculine, like war energy. And now he believes that there's this integration of masculine and feminine beliefs and structures happening. And I like to hold that vision alive. And I like to always ask myself the question, like, where can I be a bridge wherever there are walls? And while technology happens and wars are happening, and there's all of this, like, masculine chaos, how can we try to access the gifts of the masculine and the gifts of the feminine and create harmony again? And so to me, that's very much at the core of where I see this world going. And that's his belief, but I think it's a beautiful one.
I love that. That speaks to me a lot. My favorite movie of all time is Black Panther from the Marvel series cinematic universe. And at the end of that, there's a scene where T'Challa is speaking to the United Nations, and he's like coming out like, Wakanda, we're real. We have this technology, we have these capacities. And he tells the people, the foolish build walls while the wise build bridges. Or the foolish build barriers while the wise build bridges. And yeah, I know there was a time in humanity where we were matriarchy and the feminine really ruled. And, we had this on a very recent conversation on the podcast as well, the same concept of we've liked to go to extremes and now we're coming back into a center point, and we can utilize both energies to create harmony. And that's what the golden age is going to bring about, is that coherence and balance between the masculine and feminine. I love that you talked about that and mentioned it. Thank you. And we end every show with a segment called the final trio, which are just little questions we like to ask at the end. But before that, where would you send people to connect with you, to read that amazing, I don't know if you want to whip out the poetry book right now and read us a poem
I have
from
a few
that.
poems. I could read a poem.
I'm down. I'm down.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Should we do that first?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna read you a poem called "This World Has Been Waiting for You." And it's kind of just a love letter to how special each individual soul is on this planet. So you can receive it, Emilio, since you're live here with me and anyone else listening.
Of course.
This world has been waiting for you. Every grass blade pressed against your feet was beckoned to rise by the light of the sun to hold you when you stepped into this moment. You've got a certain presence. The way that your eyes can speak the language of emotion, a single glimmer conveying your awe, your joy, your despair, the kind of grief that even time cannot repair, and you carry it so graciously, the beauty and heartache. You are the bearer of light, the moment that winter has waited to melt for so that her chilled puddles could reflect even a fragment of your magic. This world bows in pleasure and gratitude for watching you as a gift to all. You are the hope that arouses passion, encouraging others to pursue their joy and opt out of the often oppressive games of money, sex, and power. You are beautiful in a way that no one could even think to possess, the kind of beauty you stop to watch because all of time and space conspired to bring you to this moment, just so that it could hold you for a fleeting lifetime. You are a continuation of life's dream, and here you are making now the only moment that matters.
Let's go. Beautiful.
Thank you.
What inspired that one?
I think I kind of coming back to that concept of remembering your divinity, I think like the world has been waiting for each of us, and we all have something so special to bring to this world. And if you've ever been in nature and just felt like everything's aligning, like there's this incredible sunset, or you see yourself in an interaction between two birds that seem in love or something like that, it really feels like everything came together to create these beautiful, beautiful moments that life wanted to gift you. And that's because you're special and you deserve to experience that. And the world's been waiting for you. And so I think if people moved with that kind of knowing of self, the world would be, I mean, such a beautiful place. And I hope that we get there. So it was just a little love note to everyone's unique beauty that they bring to the world.
Is that your first poetry book that you're releasing?
It's the first poetry book that I'm releasing. Yeah, I realized I had over 200 poems, and I'm very private about my personal writing because it exposes you. It's the most vulnerable part of who you are, and it's so much easier to get online and teach concepts that are impersonal. But the storytelling is at the heart of what connects us, and it really lifts the hood up on who we are. So I went through all of these poems and pieced together this book. And you know, it's always hard to put a book out there because as soon as you've finished writing it, it already no longer represents you now. Like you grow through the process of your writing. So I have to get over my ego and say a lot of these poems are outdated and they no longer represent who I am in this moment, but I'm going to honor the versions of me that wrote them and let that art stand, you know?
Why is it so important to share it even if you don't resonate anymore?
Because there are people who are going to read those poems that are going to see themselves in it. And also, I think it's so important to take yourself off the pedestal and be a messy human. At the end of the day, like your favorite books, the people that you connect with the most, they're the people who make mistakes and who have gone through those hard, messy things in life, and they're not pretending to be perfect, but you can feel their heart, and it kind of reminds you that it's okay to go through the human experience and to learn as you go.
Where can people find that poetry book coming up?
So you can order it on Amazon. Bela Divine is the author. I'm Bela Divine. It's called Ever Upward by Bela Divine. So if you just type in my name, it comes up pretty quickly. There's this beautiful image of a soul floating through the cosmos on the cover. You can also find it at my website, which is www.beladivine.com, or my Instagram. I have it linked there as well.
Beautiful. We'll link everything in the show notes. And for the final trio, the first two questions are personalized to the guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one is, when you imagine your legacy, what do you want your great, great, great granddaughters to remember you by?
Oh my gosh, what a powerful question. I want my great great granddaughters to remember me as their elder who fought for the liberation of women. You know, I love serving all people, but especially indigenous women. I have such a dream of being able to provide resources to them, especially because in Latin America, a lot of Native women are, there's a lot of machismo, there's a lot of like oppression by the masculine and abuse and things like that. And so I want to be able to teach them the skills to get free. And so I want my great granddaughters to remember me by the way that they feel so free to dance and express themselves and to, you know, really exist freely as women.
Beautiful. The second question, what are we being asked to remember right now, not as individuals, but as a collective species?
I think we're being asked to remember what really matters. And on a personal level, to me, that's what can't be burnt away. So if you think about if everything in your life was going to burn down in a fire, you know, what wouldn't be burnt away? Your community, the love in your life, your memories, your adventures, the things that you learned that helped you to hold yourself through it. Like those things have so much more value to me now, but I think that lesson applies to everybody.
Very powerful. And you know, the last question that we ask, these episodes are sort of like living time capsules. And when we talked about legacy, I feel like everything, the transmissions of wisdom that we're threading together in these conversations, that's going to be my personal legacy for the future generations. So we call this question the time capsule question. And it requires us to travel out a little bit into the future, do a little timeline jumping, 15, 20 years down the line. And I chose out those time frames because I believe that's going to be a time in history where the young generations of today are going to be stepping into leadership positions around the world, more so than they are now. And that includes in all industries, you know, education, politics, whatever it is, finance. And every great leader that has come before us has had great mentors, great teachings, and really great resources that they were able to learn and absorb from the people that came before. So you had a personal time capsule that you were gifted to leave behind for, you know, these leaders in the future. And 20 years down the line, let's say we're at the precipice of a new era, a golden age for humanity. And these leaders had, you know, questions about what's the best way to lead into this new earth. What would you leave behind in a time capsule for them that would help them be the best leaders that they could be in the future? It could be something physical. It could be something non-physical. You know, it can be whatever really your imagination can fit into this time capsule. But what would you leave behind for the next generations?
That's a great question. Okay, the first thing that I would leave behind, which is just such a me answer, would be a book just specifically conveying the truths and lessons that I've learned through my personal life, because I believe that we don't have all the time to make every mistake ourselves. And so we have to learn from the mistakes and the challenges of others. And I just truly, at the core of my being, believe that there is nothing more powerful than storytelling. You can tell me the teachings, you can, you can explain, here's how to do XYZ, but at the end of the day, like lived experience and these wild stories of like, oh my God, you lived that initiation. To me, those are really what sticks with me and makes an impact. So I would want to leave behind the stories, like even what I was just sharing about going through these fires and how it made me realize what really matters is what cannot be burned away. Like those are the things that I would want to share. And then I would probably leave behind, you know, my my signature program, Divine Alignment Activator, on a hard drive, just because I created that program when I had learned so many different things, but I wanted to piece them all together and I wanted them all in one place. And so I think that's kind of yeah, I mean the things that I teach in there would definitely be part of the legacy. And then there would probably be some of my favorite books, like the books that have really, really transformed me. I would love
Which
to just have
ones?
a little personal library. Okay, let me think. So, I most recently read Polishing the Mirror by Ram Dass, and I was halfway through it when my house burned down. And this book is all about releasing attachments. So for me, it was such a great teacher because I was
Wow.
reading all about this concept of, letting go of attachments, and then I had to practice it. So that felt really, really powerful. There's a book on mediumship that helped me to activate my spiritual gifts in a big way, and it's a little bit cheesy, but the techniques, like the practices, are just as powerful as my lineage teachings. It's called Spirited by Rebecca Rosen. I will say again, it's written a little cheesy, but she's a real medium. I really respect her work, and I've lived it. Like
Mm.
it worked for me. So um I love The Wheel of Time by Carlos Castaneda. Um Eastern Body, Western Mind is a really beautiful book. I think the author is like Anandaya Judith or something like that. And
Yeah.
it's the psychology of the chakras. So it's a really beautiful way to heal trauma, but it's more of an Eastern approach. And I think it blends, Western and Eastern philosophies beautifully. So those are a few that come to mind. And then I don't know, maybe my favorite fantasy books, like the A Court of Thorn and Roses series, to encourage these leaders in the future to not lose touch with their imagination as adults.
Hmm. We'll throw the poetry book in there just in
And my
case.
poetry
Just in
book too,
case.
to expose myself vulnerably to them.
Love it. I love it. Well, Bella, thank you so much for the stories that you share and really weaving them all together in such a beautiful way. Being so vulnerable, being so raw, and also for being a voice for our generation. It's really admiring to see what you're doing, and huge respect to all the beautiful creations that you're putting out to the world. It's been a pleasure. I hope to do this again very soon. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, me too, Emilio. You are so easy to talk to. My nervous system has been so at ease, and you're a great, I don't want to say interviewer, but a great conversationalist. So thank you for doing your research and for making this a beautiful conversation. We enjoyed it so much.
Of course. Thank you. Appreciate it.